Tell me a little bit about Engel's history. How long has Engel been around, and did you do anything before coolers, and what else do you handle in addition to coolers?
Well, Engel actually is a brand name started in 1962 with the production of 12-volt refrigerator freezers. So coming up towards the end of this year, we actually turned 50. Our core business are 12-volt freezers, supplying to the EMS, the boating, the fishing, the camping, the RV. Everybody uses our Engel freezers. More recently, we've developed into the cooler business, and we don't build anything unless it's the best.
I hear a lot of talk, a lot of conversations. I get emails, phone calls. People want to know what's really the big difference between a high-performance cooler and a regular cooler.
What sets Engel apart from other coolers, the traditional, let's say, inexpensive coolers, is they're not designed to last many, many years. We've built this not only to last a long time, with quality marine-grade latches, hinges. You need a lot less ice, so you're saving money on ice. Or if you're only going out for the day, you're not doing a 5-day trip, you don't need a lot of ice. So you're saving a lot of space as well.
And again, going back to what you just said, before I started fishing with Engel, and you had your traditional coolers that you could buy for $24.99 or whatever that price might be, over the course of a couple of months, depending on how much that I actually fished or used my boat, you would have a hatch fall off or a latch here or there, and those coolers would just not last being out in an offshore center console, that you just didn't have a lot of life expectancy.
What makes an Engel good is two real factors: the insulation, good quality insulation, thick insulation, and typically on our coolers the insulation is double or more of what you get on a normal cooler. Some of the normal coolers don't even put in insulation, it's just air. Now we do use a polyurethane. The entire cooler is polyurethane, but 2 inches all the way, particularly on the bottom. Because let's say you're only putting in a bag or 2 of ice. Well, where's the coldest part of your cooler? At the bottom. The second thing that makes us good is a gasket. Inexpensive coolers typically do not have gaskets. You drive your boat fast, you're doing 30 miles an hour, 40 miles an hour. What happens with the air? If your cooler is not sealed properly, the air will blow into your cooler and it'll blow out. And that cold air is just constantly being removed and replaced by hot air. It just eats up your ice incredibly fast. So 2 key features there.
And looking at your latches, there are other manufacturers out on the market too where maybe the rubber might wear out in time and break or whatever. You seem to have basically a foolproof latch that really locks down that lid.
Our latches, our Engel latches, are actually called draw latches because they are designed to draw the lid down. The cheaper coolers out there, it's a plastic latch with a living hinge, and a living hinge means it's just a thin piece of plastic. The ultraviolet gets to it, a use gets to it, or if you knock it, it will tear or break. One other important thing, our latches are screwed in not to the plastic of the cooler. We've actually got metal stainless steel inserts that are molded into the cooler at the time of production. So if you ever have to change a latch for whatever reason, it's a machine thread screw. You just unscrew it, it's Phillips screwdriver, you can change out a latch, it's as easy as that. It's well engineered.
The other thing that really stands out is how durable they are, and you like to go ahead and tout it that they're basically bear proof. It's almost impossible for a bear to get in, and we sort of chuckle at that being saltwater anglers where we don't come in contact with bears, but our form of a bear is like I just did a recent Bimini trip where I took my 28-foot center console across the Bimini with a northeast 20-knot wind, and I could tell you everything just gets beat on a trip like that, including myself. And the thing about you is that your coolers have a very strong, basically an outer shell. Tell me where that strength comes into play, or how do you derive that?
The best way to compare it is these new kayaks that you buy that people do whitewater rafting on. They're made of polyethylene. All these sit on top plastic kayaks. You can drag it over rocks, you can kind of do what you want to it. They're pretty indestructible. We're using the same material as the outer skin.
The other thing I like about an Engel cooler is when you have it in the cockpit of your boat, no matter how rough it is out there, it stays put.
Our coolers are all, let's say, about 1/3 of an inch off the ground, so you can easily wash underneath it. And then on each corner is a fairly indestructible rubber, and it's a white rubber now, non-skid, non-marking foot. But really, at the back of the boat or anything behind the center console of your boat, your cooler's not going anywhere.
Talk about the handles.
Sure. We have 2 types of handles. One is a hand grip, your traditional bulletproof hand grip. Within that hand grip, we have rope handles that come off as well. Nice ergonomically designed handles that when you lift the handles up, they're coming above the lid of the cooler. And it's very easy then to walk with one person on a medium-sized cooler, going back to the cheaper coolers out there, if you fill up a cheap cooler, a big cheap cooler, and you pick up on that handle, more often than not the handle will remain in your hand and the cooler remains on the floor.
Also, dividers now, part of the Engel options here.
Our new coolers for this year have incorporated in the new molding that we've done a divider system. Optional dividers, which is essentially like a piece of starboard that is designed to slot straight into the middle of the cooler between the latches. And on our larger cooler where we have 3 latches, you can have 2 divider slots.
And also, something as simple as a drain plug. You also have a performance-oriented drain plug.
Yeah.
Tell me about that.
As a marine biologist, keeping fish in fresh water is not a good idea. It does change the texture and change the taste. So if you're going to keep fish, quality fish, let's say yellowfin tuna or something that you really want to keep good, you don't want the melted ice, as it does melt, to accumulate in the cooler. Our cooler has got the ability, with one turn of your fingers, you can open the drain plug and it will slowly drip. That as your ice slowly melts, the floor of the cooler will remain completely, basically dry. And the ice will do its job, it'll keep everything cold, but no water will accumulate.
As you well know, I use my Engels to store my drinks and my sandwiches, and I also use the Engel cooler to house my bait when I go offshore trolling or if I'm going bottom fishing. And one thing that I find useful and enjoy are the Engel bait trays.
Yep. Bait trays are awesome. Professionals have been using them for years. They keep the bait out of the water, which is the melted ice, but they're keeping them cool and they're keeping them out of the sun. Using that little bit of brine keeps them firm. Now you can put 3 medium size, or what we call the 2-inch bait trays, into a cooler. We also offer a 4-inch bait tray. The 4-inch bait tray is designed for a box of chum, let's say, or box of pilchards, and you want it to defrost, but you don't want it out in the sun or on the deck of the boat and basically rotting.
Now, as far as using the coolers, what I like to do, I like to take what I like to call a sacrificial bag of ice, and I'll put it in that cooler and put the lid on there and come back probably 3 hours later when the walls have been chilled down, then add the rest of the ice. I found that once you go ahead and you chill those walls down first, that's when it provides the maximum amount of efficiency.
Using a bag of ice, you're basically cooling the walls of the cooler down. That is important, but what is actually more important is to not put in warm drinks or warm product. I'm always surprised at how many people will go out and buy straight out of the store warm product, put it in the cooler, throw 1 bag of ice on it, and the next morning they're scratching their head and saying, spent all this money on this cooler and it doesn't hold ice till the next day. Well, that's your sacrificial bag of ice you've put in there. Once the product is cold, you do need to fill up your cooler again with ice. After that, it will keep for many, many days. But you do need to always put in cold product into a cooler.
Now, life expectancy. What could you tell me about Engel coolers? How long would one last? I know that's sort of a baited question because it depends on how rough or tumble or how easygoing a person might be, but how long a cooler is going to last out there in a saltwater fishing environment?
Our coolers will last a long time. I have got the original prototypes on my boat. We've been doing this for, I guess, 3.5, 4 years now. They're in perfect condition. I have a job, a full-time job. I don't get to fish every day. I fish every weekend, let's say. So, but with normal use and normal treatment, 6, 8, 10 years. If you were to light use, a lot longer than that. So some guys will buy it and say, this is the last cooler I think I'm ever going to buy. I have to say, yes, in some circumstances it will be.
And when you look at that kind of life expectancy, it's an investment. And again, going back to the letters and emails and questions I receive, is it really worth? I mean, you look at a performance cooler like an Engel. I mean, the money that they get for that could be $300-400, depending on the model. And I always come back and I said, from experience, what these coolers would save you in terms of ice over the course of a season, that cooler is going to be there at the end of the year. It's not going to be like one of these bargain basement brands are going to break a handle here or the lid's going to break off. There's no way in the world that somebody could look at that price and say it's not well worth it. It's an investment, it's a performance-oriented cooler, and Engel delivers, and I've been completely thrilled with it.
Once you end up buying one of our coolers, you're spoiled. I mean, the features that you get, the benefits that you get are obvious over and above the cheaper ones. There's many more things that you can do with it and accessories and things like that. But getting back to basics, you're buying a cooler to keep ice cold. We do that job probably twice as good as a normal, inexpensive cooler. However, some people are using it as a step to get into their bigger boat. A normal, inexpensive cooler, you'll go straight through the lid if you step on it. A lot of folks are putting these on flats boats now. You're standing on the front of the boat, you're using it as a platform, as a casting platform. It's got to be able to take 350 pounds, some people, but it can handle that weight, absolutely. So everybody's got 3 or 4 or 5 cheap coolers that maybe they don't throw away, that are sitting in the back of the garage somewhere or out in the shed. They don't use them anymore because they're broken. It's just not worth it. And the performance factor is just not, they're not happy with it. But we get a lot of happy people using our products, and when they realize what else you can do with them.
Yep, and I'm one of those happy people. Well, Paul, I appreciate you taking us through all the insight of Engel coolers.
Thank you very much.